feel some quietness. And I know some folks are just here for a few moments before they are moving on. I know we have some stuff that we want to share similar to what we've offered in the morning, but we just also want to just start with a few moments of quietness. If folks are open to that. So if you have a practice in which you connect with a more quiet part of yourself, you can tap into that. A more quiet part of the world. That's less familiar to you. You might notice the breeze passing through the tent right now. Notice what it feels like. Moving through your body. Noticing what it feels like when there's less breeze. Feeling more into the body and the sensations here. Place like camp, as we pay attention to what is more quiet, we might also notice sound. What is it like to let the sound feel gentle? Less about communication, less about something we need to understand or interpret, but just sensation.
Basically, she was telling me that it was decided that the teachers
Does the breeze help you with that? As we close this more quiet time, I'm going to ring a bell,
prejudice and their issues with themselves.
which is going to be another form of sound.
It was a very like mother like bounty, and like my friends that were around, I was like super embarrassed the shit that I'm making and like the way that she spoke about it was so.
Can you notice what that sensation is like
And like my friends were always
in your body,
certain of my friends
through your ears,
were like have certain different issues
for the rest of your body?
and it's because she was reflecting she was reflecting everyone back, which we all kind of sense it, but she was being very it's really hard for me to reflect. Absolutely, yeah, we are all
Thank you.
each other.
So, again, I'm Katie Lonk. This is Dawn Haney. And we come from the Buddhist Peace Fellowship national offices that are in occupied Ohlone lands in Oakland, California. And we were up here because we were invited to come and share a little of what we have learned about how to deal with burnout in hard situations. And we were laughing on the phone before we got here that there's definitely a rhyming quality to the way that some of us choose to enter into like a Buddhist meditation retreat for maybe 7 days or 10 days or even a month. It's an experience of voluntary duress, like voluntary, very, very challenging circumstances. It brings often a lot of body pain, often a lot of emotional pain comes up as part of the healing and transformation process. But similarly, I think here at camp, if my understanding is correct, everyone is here voluntarily right now. Let me see your hand if you're here voluntarily. Yep, yeah. And it's not easy, you know? It's not an easy thing that you're volunteering to do. So it takes some amount of courage and some amount of determination and commitment to an outcome that you want to see. And in this case, that is maybe about abolishing ICE. It may be about abolishing borders altogether, about awakening society into one that is less cruel and more truthful. And so we feel that our spiritual practice and our political action really need each other in order to be complete. You know, that's why we're part of Buddhist Peace Fellowship, and we learn a lot from the different realms that then inform each other. So today we're going to go through a few different tools and practices that might come in handy, but thank you for starting us off with a little bit of silence, because we're not going to be telling you anything that you don't already know on some level, that you haven't already experienced in yourself. And sometimes it's just about creating the circumstances that allow those quieter noises, sounds, or those like gentler breezes to be felt and heard. We're not here to like disseminate the answers. We're just here to create some different conditions.
Want to do a welcome and intros?
Sure.
Welcome. We'd love to hear from folks. Just to welcome everyone into the space. Yes, find yourself
Come on
in if
in.
you would consider that. We can rearrange the circle as needed. We'd like to hear from each person if you're willing to share a name, gender pronouns that you're using, and if you have access needs that we as a community for the next couple of hours can help support. And access needs, if as I've been learning from disability justice community in the Bay Area, one way I've been learning to think about and share is that we all have access needs. You know, like we need to breathe, I need water to drink because it is a hot day and I'm going to be thirsty. And that in the world that we live in, bye dears. In the world that we live in, the world meets a lot of our access needs already for some of us, but not for everyone. And so there is so I think it is important for us as a community, you know, to take care of the access needs that are not being met, you know, because it's a structural issue rather than a personal issue. So it's definitely important to hold it in community rather than be trying to hold it as individuals. So one way to also reflect on that is if your access needs are being met, you can just name that as a way to reflect on that. So again, my name is Dawn, to model. Pronouns they, them, she, her are all great. I need some water, so I'm gonna get in some. And I'm still in that bit of foggy zone, so I'm gonna still ask my co-facilitator, I have a water bottle, thanks, if I get a little tangential to keep pulling me in. So, can I pass it to you?
I am Elizabeth, she, her, and they, them. I have a disability, but I feel that my access needs have been met, especially around, I have low vision, and especially at night. I feel like they have had good light and have helped me out when I've had to stay here. And I feel safe even though I also identify as Latina. They really care to protect those with disabilities and those who identify as people of color. So thank you to the Occupy camp.
Thank you. Can you say your name one more time? I missed
Elizabeth.
it. Elizabeth, thank
and
you.
just remember to abolish ICE and get rid of borders.
Yes. Also an access need.
Yeah.
I'm Sage. They just they them pronouns. Yeah, being able to come late and be volunteer are both ways that my needs are being met. So thank you.
Thank you. And just to flag, one access need we had last time is that folks had a hard time hearing. So if folks could try to speak up as much as possible just in case. And or reconfigure yourself. Thank you for both.
My name is Gabriel. He and I, this is my first time at the camp. I was walking by and I stumbled in to see what was going on, and I was accommodated fairly quickly. People started asking me, "You hungry? Need something to drink?" So that's really cool. I like what's going on here, and I'm happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
I'm Michaela, she, her. I'm part of the local coordinating committee of Buddhist Peace Fellowship, the Riding Katie and Dawn here. I've not been part of the ICE work. I work with the Poor People's Campaign, local police brutality issues.
Hi, I'm Marianne. I've been doing a lot of work here on coordinating translators, making sure that money's getting to places like Pueblo Unido for affected communities. I'm also a board member with Right to Survive. So we've been working with Poor People's Campaign and RAP and all that good stuff too. But I guess where my needs have been like met and then not met is, sometimes when I feel like when people do autonomous action without thinking about frontline communities, it makes me feel unsafe, and it makes me feel unsafe for them, which is largely the reason I've been doing off-site work. It scares me to bring my kids here sometimes.
I'm Bud. People call me all sorts of things, and it doesn't really matter too much to me. And I feel very fortunate that all my needs are met.
Chelsea. I use she, her pronouns. I have really bad memory and recall problems, so you might see me often take out my phone and take notes, but I promise my phone's on airplane mode, so I'm not texting or surfing the internet. I am paying attention. Thanks.
I'm Ollie. I use they, them. My needs are currently being met, but sometimes I get quiet, and that's my need.
Tim. Sometimes need can change.
Can you speak up a little bit?
At this time.
Can't hear you.
Sometimes needs can change in the moment. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to commit to anything at this time.
And what was your name again?
I'm Tim.
Tim. Hi, Tim.
Hey y'all, I'm Chris. Hey them. I think my access needs right now include people speaking up a little bit because I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing.
Hi, I'm Andrew. He, they. And saying just please speak up for me so that I can make it accessible for everyone. Thank you for having me.
Hey y'all, I'm Katie. I go by they, them. And right now my access needs are met. We good. We have a lot of water, and I would welcome if anyone wants to ask us to pass water or get up and get water. Please don't be shy. I am someone who sometimes faints if I don't get enough water or blood sugar or anything like that. So don't be shy. Hydrate, hydrate. As we know, water's life.
Yeah. One reason we wanted to continue to ask about access needs both in the morning and in the afternoon, knowing new people would be here, but also knowing that access needs change, as Tim said. And that talking about access needs for me in community has been a good way to even start to identify my own needs and limits in new ways, which has been an important part of understanding my own boundaries that I need to set, which has been an important part of managing burnout. So it's been a really good practice for me personally and in community to be exploring and be in conversation. So I hope it is of support for folks as well.
Yeah.
All right, we got about 2 hours together, and one of the things we're gonna be practicing together, which we've already begun, is around pace. And we're gonna intentionally, deliberately slow things down a little bit. And I've heard a lot of wisdom since I got to camp a few days ago about the fact, one, that we are not the first people to take on resistance in this way to family separation. That we are, I think, Sage, you've used the term, stepping into an unbroken stream of 500 years of resistance on these lands. And that helps to release and relieve a false sense of urgency and a false sense of ego that I must be the hero of this story right now. I must be the one to put an end to all this suffering immediately. And it's a good intention, it's a wholesome intention, but it tends to undermine our desires. Excess urgency actually, in the long run, slows us down because it creates friction. And anytime there's friction, it's actually draining more of your energy to have to attend to the contrast or the tension between what you say you're about and what you're actually doing. So if we say we're about all of us or none, or no one left behind, but then we're rushing, and people are being left behind, it creates contradiction and tension and draining. So we are fortunate to come from a wisdom tradition that's over 2,500 years old, that's been preserved through mainly folks in the lineages and regions now known as Asia, but which is also a kind of fake border construct lumping together a lot of different people. But we've been trained through Buddhist traditions coming via Thailand, via Burma, some via China and Japan and a Zen tradition, and then all of them tracing originally back to regions now known as Nepal or India. So practicing pace also comes with an expansiveness of humility across space and time, that the wisdom that we're asking for right now and the guidance that we're drawing upon right now is coming to us from a long time and a long distance.
I think I also want to say that I joked to my partner after we put together what we were planning to share with you that I don't think very much of it is very Buddhist directly. And it's partly because at Buddhist Peace Fellowship we draw on a lot of wisdom traditions that include Buddhist traditions, but also include a lot of political and justice traditions. But do it from a Buddhist pacing and philosophy that Katie's been talking about, and from deep Buddhist wisdom around suffering and the end of suffering, which is what the Buddha originally taught about. And so that will be woven in to other things that we felt were sort of, as we've been at camp for the last couple of days, felt like a better match for what felt like what do I want to say, for what we like what was going to land for us, coming maybe more from other teachings that we also draw on that would be helpful. So not all of it's Buddhist, some of it's political, some of it's other stuff we've been learning. So that's going to be hopefully of use.
Cool. So let's dive in. We have a framework called the 3 zones. Here it is. We have a comfort zone, a stretch zone, and a distress zone. A comfort zone is easy. It's usually known, For me, comfort zone is like a good book, warm day, a hammock, some tea, like I'm in my zone of comfort in that sense. Sometimes it's also like being in a political standoff. That can also be comfortable for me because I kind of know, I've seen enough police activity, facing off against cops, that like I can kind of start to tell, all right, when are they getting ready to make a mass arrest? When are they getting ready to make a move? And it's like there's the adrenaline that also feels comfortable in a way. Stretch zone is a place of kind of being at my edges and learning. So I have to be a little bit more aware and awake. So a situation that I'm not familiar with, Maybe I'm even in a conversation and someone's sharing a story with me that I've never heard of or something I've never considered. I could be in my stretch zone of like, oh, what's this? Distress zone is when I feel threatened or I can no longer take in information. That's kind of the main gist that we want to get across about distress zone. It's not that it's bad. It's actually part of the body's natural response for being under threat is to try to protect us, to try to prioritize and focus the safety of the body instead of like gleaning more information from the situation. So distress isn't wrong or bad, but from our perspective here, it's almost impossible to actually learn or gain information, to meaningfully take in information when we're in distress zone. Similar though about comfort zone. Usually if I'm deep in my comfort zone, because I'm not really aware and I feel like I already know what's going on, I'm probably not going to be learning much that's new. This is also a good one to notice if I'm talking about something that I think I already know about, right? As a teacher or as a communicator or as, someone who thinks that I have something to impart. It's like maybe I'm in my comfort zone rather than my stretch zone. Okay, so do these zones feel familiar to people? Has everyone had some experience being each of these zones in their life? Great. Okay. And the funny thing about them is, which we talked about a little this morning, and where a kind of political analysis can come in is, let's do a demonstration. So read me and tell me what zone am I in right now.
Anybody? Got a guess?
Stretching.
I heard stretching.
I think that you would have to know someone and their body language to know.
So Sage says you think you'd have to know somebody in their body language to know?
I'll guess comfort this time because I would be in stretch doing what you're doing, but you do this a lot, don't you?
Yeah. I would guess distress, knowing you well.
Right. Cool. Great. Good. So in the depiction of distress, we have all these like sharp lines radiating out, right? Which might indicate like distress, blah. And that is one way distress can look. But we have to remember that, you have to know someone, like Sage said. You have to know yourself and you have to know someone because distress isn't always explicitly visible. And in fact, in a patriarchal and misogynistic society, right, like people raised as boys are taught to tamp down distress, either staying very stoic or taking it out by eliminating the irritant, right? Eliminating whatever it is that is causing the distress. So, and in a white supremacist society where rationality is valued above being in touch with emotions, a lot of times people will read someone who is still or quiet as more in control or more calm than someone who's being loud or being demonstrative or using their hands a lot. But in a lot of communities of folks of color, like, being loud and being demonstrative doesn't necessarily mean there is distress, right? Like, it could be fine.
Yeah, we just talk like that.
We just talk like that. It's fine. We're not mad. Like, it's fine. We could be in comfort zone, or we could be in stretch zone, or we could be in distress zone. But yeah, the point is, like, you just don't know. And our society has set it up to make judgment calls that might be erroneous, that might be wrong. Make us think that we know when we don't. So, as we're living together and getting to know each other, it's really useful to like look into ourselves and like understand for ourselves, well, how do I know when I'm in my stretch zone or my distress zone or my comfort zone? And then maybe have some conversations with people people in our lives. So like Dawn and I have worked together for 6 years, and we are starting, even just now, like starting to really be able to know and name, like, oh, like what is Katie like when she's in distress zone, and what is Dawn like when she's in distress zone.
And recognizing that what is comfortable for me can actually be distressing for Katie. You know, that like, and so when we're actually making choices for what we want to do together or what's going to happen in camp, like that can actually be what can create conflict. So a couple of things that we've observed in our couple of days at camp might be like, so one, it might be yelling at the cops. For some people, like, that is so comfortable. Like, just like the body vibrations and the like getting the rage and the anger out and like being able to actually direct it at federal authorities, like, can feel like just like getting that feeling out can feel so comfortable. Whereas for other folks, it's like incredibly distressing. Like, so distressing to either be like worried about how that's antagonizing people, or just even the like loudness and the yelling, like for whatever reason that distress can be there. And so that conflict can really come up because different people have, you know, for one person that's comfortable and for somebody else that's incredibly distressing. You know, another thing that came up in a General Assembly meeting was around food choices. You know, someone expressed like a need for meat in the camp, that was actually going to be more comfortable and necessary for their body, whereas there'd been a lot of choices for and needs for vegan food at camp, and so that was going to be some conflict, that for some folks meat was going to be comfortable and for other folks vegan choices were going to be comfortable, and the other option was going to feel distressing. And so how do you find options? How do you actually be in how do you find options, but how do you actually be in the conversation in which, like, at the beginning of the conversation, both folks are actually in a distressed zone and actually are not able to take in information about what the other person is even saying. That's what gets hard, is if you're in a space where like my comfort is your distress and your distress is my comfort, we can't even be in a conversation with each other because I can't hear you.
But the good news is, by practicing being in the stretch zone, you can actually expand your stretch zone. So sometimes in Buddhism it's called mindfulness or mindful awareness, but bringing an attitude of non-judgmental exploration and curiosity. It doesn't have to be like apathetic, like it's not like you have to be some like objective observer who doesn't have emotions, but like making space for the fact that like sometimes there are competing needs in life and that can be painful, and not being afraid of that, while also not needing to feed into it, is part of mindful awareness. So part of our goal in practice, I would say, is to expand our stretch zone by questioning that which feels comfortable for us and helping ourselves move back from distress zone into stretch or comfort. Also knowing that as beings that are biologically most of the time wired to respond to each other, distress zone can be contagious. So if I'm around someone who's in distress zone, if I'm not actively practicing to get into my stretch or comfort zone with that distressed person, I'm likely to also move into distress zone, and then there's no information coming into me either. So I was making sense so far? Yeah, please.
I've been thinking about this a lot and coming to realize that it's a very layered thing. And I'm thinking about a month ago, I got a call, a friend of mine was in intensive care. And when I went to see her, I'd never seen so much plumbing in my life. House plumbing or any kind of plumbing. And she couldn't respond, or as I found out later, she didn't even know I was there. But I didn't feel distressed in that situation. I felt like this is the place I needed to be. But at the same time, being a rather nonverbal person, the responsibility to carry on a conversation was entirely on me, and I didn't know how to deal with that. So there's distress at the same time there's comfort.
And what was it about the situation and having to carry on the verbal side of the conversation that let you know that you were in distress?
Well, it was immediately obvious because I don't like to be in that situation of having to carry on a conversation that's pretty much one-sided. Well, the weather's pretty nice outside today, blah, blah, blah. That was very stressful.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from folks in general for a minute of like, are there examples in your life or here at camp where you've noticed maybe yourself going into distress zone? And what has that been like?
Are we going to be sharing some of the ways we move ourselves from distress to stretch and comfort?
Yes.
It really helps me to feel grounded and connected with God, to know I'm here to learn. I thought you were asking our experiences.
Yes. First is how, I think maybe the question is, how do you know that you are in distress? Like, what is that even, what's that like in your experience?
And we'll get to
we'll get there. That's the next question.
Yeah. For me, I feel like in my chest, and I start to like my fist start to clench, and I feel it in my shoulders. And then I'm on the autism spectrum, and I have a disability. I tend to get traumatic. And then I start like going like this and this. And then it feels like there's not like literally, but like there's like blinders on, and then I can't even think of it. And sometimes I start crying, but I can feel it in my chest. I can feel it in my fists and in my arms and my stomach and all over the place. And sometimes, even though I should not do it, I get angry and I might scream or I might yell or I might say something that I regret because I feel like, well, how else can I release it? It's like a volcano or like a safety valve. I need to release it somehow, and sometimes I don't release it in the best way possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth. There's so much wisdom in there of like, okay, like body sensations is part of how we could know that we're in distress. And also I heard like the agency and the choice. We have some choice of how we're responding to being in distress. And for me too, like sometimes I choose a skillful way and sometimes I choose an unskillful way. And sometimes it feels like there's very little choice involved. But that's why we have a community of practice to help us. It's not just us. Anybody else? How do you know that you're in distress zone?
I can get really shaky, like my anxiety will make it so I just can't stop trembling. So I have a really physical response to like severe stress, which again is largely why I've just chosen not to be at camp a whole lot, because if I feel super stressed, I get to the point where my body just wants to shut down. I start shaking and I stop being able to respond anymore. So I don't even go into that like fight or flight. I just completely go into the black and I'm unable to respond anymore. So that's usually when I'm like, all right, I gotta go home and I'm gonna go to sleep way too much for too many days because it gets really stressful. Yeah.
Always feel things in my body, but I get repetitive thinking is a more mind pattern when I'm in distress.
Yeah, my reaction is similar to that. Except for the increasing tension in my shoulders and neck, I tend to leave my body and start thinking, being judgmental. Things get very stiff and narrowly focused.
Yeah.
And I lose emotional, physical awareness sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely shut down and stopped communicating, and maybe more of like less of like in the moment, like I'm non-responsive, but more of like I'll just kind of self-isolate as much as possible, and like not intentionally, but just like this sort of like clamshell, like turtle response of withdrawing.
I think you've been here as little as I have in the past week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much?
I understand what you say, because I was depressed the other day about not coming here, and instead of deciding to come here, I decided to hide away. So when I get depressed, I tend to isolate or shake when I get anxiety. So my counselor says it's not healthy, but what does one to do?
Sometimes it feels right. Let's just stay focused.
My voice gets tense from a lower pitch to a higher pitch, and I go into hyper think fast. I got to protect everybody. As a baby, it was my job to be the responsible adult, protecting and caring for people. And so I think of everything that could possibly go wrong and how to problem solve ahead of time.
Yeah.
Which youth are not keen on.
Yeah, I think that's really important when we talk about white supremacist, misogynistic capitalism rewards stress responses that result in greater productivity. So for some of us, being in distress means higher adrenaline, faster heart rate, shallower breathing, but actually being able to do more, or seemingly do more, be kind of like hyper functional or hyper busy. And that's a very confusing one, because it's hard to call someone, it's hard to bring awareness to a distressed zone that is actually upheld by our society. And that's again why it's so important to think about pace, because capitalism just wants us to be productive machines to increase profit, but we're actually beings that aren't just made to be productive. And I mean, speaking for myself and my own family, we have a lot of like workaholism in my family. And actually, my grandfather on my mom's side survived 4 different concentration camps in the Holocaust because he was an auto mechanic, and so his skills were useful to the Nazis. So in my cellular memory, in my body, is a message that's telling me you will be safer if you are more productive and if you are more useful. So my distress zone tends to be go, go, go. Analyze the threats, fix the situation, like never shut down. That's why we're here together, to heal and to be like, yo, people migrating, moving, to survive, to feed families. Should be welcomed and not punished. Our responses to threats to our survival posed by oppressive systems are to be understood with empathy and healed rather than pathologized and punished.
Yeah, it's actually been powerful for me too. I recently read Caliban and the Witch, which is Silvia Federici's book about the origins of capitalism in Europe at the same time as the witch trials, and the like how essential the violence of the witch trials was in disconnecting poor and working class white people from our bodies, for the origins of capitalism to begin, because people were not actually willing to work for wages without that level of violence. And so that's like also part of like my cellular structure as a white person is like that is that level of violence of like, oh, I need to be a worker to avoid harm. And so it's really been like a wellspring for me to open up like mindfulness of the body and reconnection with the body as an anti-capitalist practice. That's been really, just regrounding for my body as well.
Oh my gosh, look at this blessing.
What and what? Speaking of reconnecting with the body that is warm.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I got another bag. Don't worry about it. Do you want some, please?
This is also fun because I don't know what flavor it's going to end up being.
Right? Top it off.
Maybe we're moving deeper into our comfort or stretch zones.
Right.
Thanks for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to stay hydrated. Cool. No, you don't like grapes? That's what kind I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Want to talk about how we want to move out of the stress?
Yeah.
Popsicles. That's one
What
option.
are intentional and unintentional ways of moving out of stress? Yeah, Steve.
So the situation I'm thinking about where I like experience distress was being at the GA yesterday, and like, you know, there's like plenty of things that are annoying that happen in GAs, but then like the mayor's representative came and said some fucking bullshit, and like
The which representative? Sorry. The which representative?
The mayor's representative.
Mayor's representative. Thank you.
And like I saw my brain split into like half was like, don't fuck this up for everybody by like screaming right now. Another part of me was like in my head just like every expletive and like mixed with like political analysis and like just it was so distressing for me to sit there and let him say his completely meaningless stuff. And like I can feel it in my body now coming back. And then afterwards we just kept going with the meeting, and I just was stuck in this state of like, what the fuck just happened? What the fuck just happened? Like, are we gonna talk about it? Like, he basically was just like victim blaming us for like any sort of like aggression that the cops might have, and so it showed like zero concern about the actual political situation at all. And like, this is the mayor and this is bad, and so whatever. This is all going through my head. But when I left, when the meeting ended, we never really debriefed it. I just like started talking to people about it. Like I just like sat down next to someone and was like, well, that was some bullshit, and like it was not a formal debriefing process, but it was a way of like just talking to people who were available to listen until I could calm down and be like, yes, that was bullshit, and like I don't feel under attack anymore about it.
Yes. I think that's really important. When I first came to Buddhism, it was like I had already been an activist for a while, and I was being taught by mostly white teachers, with a couple exceptions, which was challenging for me. And one of the things that the white teachers would say, the white cis men teachers, was, you need to drop your resistance to reality. I was like, resistance is really important to my whole life. So, no. But what I came to recognize which I hear in what you're saying is like, the resistance they're talking about is the outrage of like, this can't be happening. This can't be happening. This is not happening. Why is this happening? This can't be happening. Why is this person saying bullshit? Why is this person saying bullshit? And that's just trapping me in this whole proxy battle with reality versus accepting, oh yeah, this person said some bullshit. Okay, what are we gonna do about it? like I drop resistance to reality so I can increase resistance to oppression. Does that make sense?
Can you repeat that?
I drop my resistance to reality, what is happening, so that I can increase my resistance to oppression, to injustice. Yeah.
I think the only thing that's helped me with that is like remembering Brene Brown's like, what if people are just doing the best that they can? So even though like we're in distress and we hear stuff from, you know, Wheeler's office or E. Daly's office, or we hear bullshit like on the news, it's clear bullshit. Yeah, and I even say this about when I happen to read shit on Fox News. Like, I think, you know, it's probably the best they can do. I know it's not right, but if I go in there, you know, ready to just like fight every troll on the internet, it's not gonna help us like in the long run anyway. So I've just learned not to really bother with a lot of it. I just hope that they're doing the best they can, and in the end, like whatever resistance we're putting up is hopefully going to win, because what we're doing isn't wrong, and what we're doing isn't illegal. So I just have to keep reminding myself of that. Like, what we're doing is right. Like, in the end, it's going to be okay. It's going to take a while, but it's going to be okay. But that's been like hard to remember, especially when I'm put in really stressful situations, and I have to be like, it's probably the best they can do. Like, you know, we all have to start growing from somewhere, and this is where that person is right now. They're in a different stage. I have to let it go. But it's really hard. It is really hard. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's helped me, especially when it's somebody who's closer to me, it's like when it's Fox News, it's like, okay, yes, they've grown up in this white supremacist patriarchal culture. That's where they're at. But when someone who's closer to me that I expect something more, I often like come back to this space and I'm like, are they actually in distress? And does that bring me more compassion for what's going on for them? So that's my other technique often. But I wonder if we want to try going into pairs now that folks have mostly eaten their popsicles. How do folks feel about pairing up to have this next question of what helps you move out of distress when you're in distress back into stretch and comfort? Having the opportunity to talk to one other person about one technique that you found to be helpful. Does that sound like a okay strategy? Have an opportunity to check in with another person about that. If you feel better just reflecting on that on your own, also cool. And then I liked your strategy this morning, so I will invite it again. That we will ask if you're open to it, to share it out so that we can have a collective longer list of strategies that you might be open to trying. But instead of sharing out your own strategy, to practice your deeper listening skills and plan to share out your partner's strategy that they use. So if you can find a partner that you feel comfortable working with, somebody you know or somebody that you're interested in meeting.
I just thought there's pairs.
Sure. Yeah.
What do you do?
And if you want and need a partner, if you can
safe, right?
Is that okay for you?
Give me a flag, and I'm happy to come be a partner to anybody that wants to meet a partner.
Well,
What helps you move out of distress into stretch and comfort?
Going to leaving.
Yeah.
Retreat.
Sorry. No, you're good. Thanks.
You need a different color?
I've been trying to leave the house.
Then are you open to partnering with me?
Nothing. To talk to people who might agree with you.
Yeah, or I mean, if I can keep myself from getting too distressed, that's where I try to remind myself.
So you said you talk to people who might sympathize with you and
And I try to
understand what you're saying.
bring
That's
compassion
really
to
what you're saying. Thought it out.
So I feel like